Yeah, I can hear me.
Hey, we in the. Back
You know,
in the
we
house
up in
once
there.
again. Yeah, I'm telling you, I got no
Your filter is off.
right now. I'm
Hey man, you good? You good?
Dave filter is off today.
off. You know how.
All right.
You can fix it already.
All right, fellas,
Get the hell out of here.
let's get ready.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I gotta move to what's the name.
2. Yeah.
Oh, what's going on?
What it do?
We here.
Facebook Live was good. Facebook Replay was good.
Willie,
Hey.
what's happening, Willie Harris? Well, we
Yeah,
saw a dude that looked just like you in the Columbia the other day, dog.
Yes, sir. We
Oh
did.
my goodness, I
Right.
was like, Willie,
Antjuan, say something in your mic.
Hello.
Yeah, he is. Mr. Parker?
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's it, man.
Y'all here?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I hear J-Mouth. But he ain't got to check nothing.
That's it.
Call him self-check. Self-check. All right. Facebook Live. Get ready to send your questions and things in. We're going to chop up the politics of things.
The politics of today.
Month 5, Donald Trump.
2000.
It'll be different tomorrow, so it's got to be
The
today.
politics of
Of
today
today, that's right.
will
Yeah.
transform.
Conservatism 2017. That's what we're going to do.
We love you, John.
I'm still
Starting it already.
I'm still trying to figure out this effort to make America great. Maybe John will be able to help me out tonight. I think America's getting worse, as my grandma would say.
Well, if the liberals and the media would get out of the way and just let us go ahead and improve our country.
America great. They just misspelled it. Grate.
We're going to great
Seemed like what they were. So they were but anyway,
It's so amazing how John and my GOP friends want to make the media out.
oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Well, as you can tell, we're about to start the show, everybody.
They want to make the media out of these bad people, yet they continuously watch the media.
Hey, man.
People continuously get their information, and
Can
the
we get
media is
the
just
first
doing
log
its job. The media is just doing its job of giving the facts.
Antoine, that's part of the reason I'm on this podcast right now, because I want some free thinking going
go.
on and getting out of this these couple high-powered individuals that
There we
are
go.
pushing their agenda in the mainstream media. So
right.
thank you all for the service.
And thank y'all for tuning in. This
That's
is
right.
show 63. You ready, Darren? All right, Freethinkers Radio, show 63.
I'm in the middle of it.
You know, fortunately, I love the mainstream media. You know why? Because they give it to you raw and uncut every day. You know,
Raw and uncut.
raw and uncut. You know, it was.
How is a 30-second soundbite culture uncut?
Well, here's the thing. That culture was started by your party when they wanted to oppose. When Barack Obama.
I'm pretty sure that-
No, when Barack Obama. When Barack Obama
buddy.
went to the bathroom to pee, literally, it became a talking point for the Republican Party.
Hey,
It
we're
was-
here.
I don't know
what's
Shouts
going on,
out
everybody?
to the intro song.
Oh, hey.
But don't worry about that. We ain't be doing intro song today. We just gonna start right at this is the music of politics today. It is show 63, politics with the experts, Mr. from Swansea himself, the most likely to succeed Swansea,
Voted most likely to
Mr.
succeed.
Antjuan
Mr.
Seawright.
David, the road to heaven runs through Swansea all the way to Lower Richland.
That's it. That's it.
Right?
All right.
I
Now.
thank God for Swansea and Lower Richland.
That's
my
it.
dog.
You stole that dog. And in this corner,
The contender.
yes, sir. The defending
defender,
champion
yeah.
right now. This is
The reigning-
under the Republican president Donald Trump.
As we are the
Great.
champions, we made it through November somehow. We'll never know. Maybe with the tip of the hat to Russia, but either way.
There's more than a tip of the hat.
Hey man, don't hate the player, hate the game. It is John Parker here today. Thank you for joining us, sir. Ice J Will, what's good? We're in the first song. Feel free to think.
We are
freely.
in it to win it today.
Hey man, the first song is we gonna need it, man. We gonna need this here. Let me bring it up.
All right. So speaking of bringing it up,
At least we know it's not too simple.
listen, love is on our side.
That's it, 'cause we need that.
Kings. I'm telling you, I can't do the joint like James.
James is
gonna make up some.
Yeah, hey, love is on our side. Capital Kings. Feel free to play free.
Speaking of Draymond Green, this is Capital's king.
Yo, I want to say over the
But the
weekend.
game does come on tonight.
It does.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to say over the weekend, shout out to the Southern Baptist Convention. So
Southern Baptist
they
Convention?
stood up to the alt-right movement. They spoke out against a couple
You
things.
mean John Parker's friend?
Whoa.
Hey,
Don't
but,
put me
but
there.
I will say it's
Wow.
a lot of people upset right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people upset about it.
Did they stood up to when they say stand up to all right, does it mean they wouldn't let
They denounced
They
alt-right.
denounced
They said
hate.
this is.
They
They denounced. Yep.
Yuckism is what I'm calling it now. They denounced right wing, red meat, racial rhetoric that we
Wow.
get from John Parker's
What exactly did they stand up to?
They stood up
That's not
against
wondering.
alt-right, the alt-right movement.
What in what form?
They said we would not promote hate or let these things have access in our churches in our convention.
what won't have access? In
Well,
our
I mean, they
church?
won't let that be taught. Like the supremacy, white supremacy.
The white supremacy?
Or
They won't let white supremacy be taught.
I certainly would hope they would.
In church.
I'm pretty sure.
Hey.
I'm pretty sure Jesus Christ was not
Shout out to
promoting
the
white
Southern Baptist
supremacy.
Convention, I guess.
I think this is
Wow.
another way of saying that brand that the GOP tried to brand over the years, GOP, God's only party. The
Ooh.
Southern Baptists literally took a stand and say,
We're
"No
back."
way, Jose."
And we're back. Freethinkers
Freethinkers
Radio.
Oh man.
Okay,
This is gonna be good.
It's always good, isn't it? It's always good.
It's always
It's
a
gonna be
blessing.
better.
Hey, I'm telling you.
Little heated,
When we,
nothing wrong with a little heated fellowship.
Absolutely, because
Because there's ultimately love, all here, no hate.
Right.
absolutely, yeah, it's all love.
Hate
No,
does not
we're just
win.
trying to be informed. You know what I'm saying?
That's
By experts. I mean, we have the person voted most likely to slam a reporter and still win election. You know, one of y'all.
Wait a second, was that me?
One of y'all. I don't know which one. I don't know which one.
You are a reflection of your party. So
Did he get found guilty today?
he pled guilty.
He pled
pled
guilty
guilty.
today, finally. Did he plead guilty
He's
on
gotta do 40
election
hours
day?
to
So this is how we're making America great. Body slam reporters and say it's okay.
That's it. That's it.
Wait. He did not. He pled guilty. He didn't say it was okay. He
Well, he
apologized
didn't say it
for
wasn't okay.
and he's paying the crime for it. It would be nice if you actually had some honest reporters there that weren't out bad. But despite that, that does not excuse that behavior, which is why Speaker Ryan and himself came
Right.
out there. No one defended that action, including himself. He acknowledged,
But
it was
no
wrong.
one told
and that,
him-
And to go out there as the media and the left wing crazy liberals like Antjuan here at the moment's trying to be, to sit there and say that somehow we approve of that is just totally unfair and very see-through.
If that was a Democrat, they would have been having his or her political funeral right now. Literally.
Right.
And
Well,
John knows.
So, do you think do you think this is a situation where we've made temperament a secondary issue for candidates now?
We've
Is that what that
embraced
is?
this because of the crazy nut job who's occupying the White House. If you remember, this attitude and this approach, this violence in our politics started during his campaign rallies. When he was like, they were punching people and he was kicking them out. He was yelling, "My black friend" over there. All that culture started to develop, started to swell up a bit during his campaign rallies. And now it's like, it's free to do.
You can try to lay violence in politics at the feet of Donald Trump if you want to, but I mean, we aren't at the place that we've been in this country where people are actually getting into fistfights and duels on the House floor.
Right.
This is not any new thing. We like to think about that it is new, but history tends to repeat itself, and there's been violence in this type of upheaval for years, centuries, and in other beyond just in American politics and in politics throughout history. So
John,
that's not really fair.
John, that's partly true, but in those instances, we've never had a candidate encouraging that. Oh my God, lock him out. Lock him out. I mean, that's what we heard during the course of the campaign.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's never been encouraged by a candidate who's now the leader of the free world and who has yet to denounce some of the stuff that we see going on in our political system.
Well, I'll tell you what really the interesting, the subject that's not talked about with Montana and body slamming this reporter is the effect of early voting. Because ultimately that election in so many ways was already
already
decided.
over.
It was already over. And so there needs to be some kind of honest conversation here on whether or not early voting and all this, the expansion of absentee voting to where Election Day is not actually held on Election Day anymore is a good thing for the democratic process.
Well, here's the thing. You want to talk about early voting in the democratic process, you got to remember your party are literally trying to suppress voters in a lot of places. I mean, you guys started to suppress the minority vote effort right after President Obama was elected. And he was elected in 2008. In 2010, there was legislation filed across the country, starting in the South, where literally it was effort to suppress the minority vote because we saw record turnout. And now there's still an ongoing effort to suppress the vote by way of gerrymandering and a lot of other things. So you can't have it both ways, John.
Well, gerrymandering does not suppress vote in any
of course
form.
it does. Of course
it doesn't suppress vote.
Of course it does.
How does gerrymandering suppress vote?
Because
That doesn't have anything to do with turnout.
No, it does.
Devalues
Because ultimately,
votes,
it doesn't make.
I agree with that. David's right on
It
that.
doesn't make the election process fair.
Well, again, you
And so
can argue whether it's fair
that
or not, but
suppress
it doesn't
people-
actually suppress
Well,
vote,
that
which is
suppress people all by itself, because if you live in a majority white district that will always be Republican just by way of numbers, you're going to ask yourself, does my vote really count? And that's the question most people ask. Why should I go vote in a district that I know is going to be Republican because of the way the lines are drawn?
which fair enough, but there's a difference here in that by law you have to have districts that are majority minority, meaning that, okay, I'm white, I'm going to be the only person that is able to vote in a black district, for example, or a Hispanic district. And that's actually written into the law. At least on the other hand, it's a voluntary type thing. And so, again, we can go look at this stuff and say, okay, is this the fair, best way? You've heard me say before, I'd like to see some difference in
John,
the way we draw our lines.
There's a reason why the Supreme Court that's tilted to the right because of Mr. Trump's most recent appointment.
There's been no change. That's not true. There's been no change. If anything, it shifted slightly to the left.
No, it's just to the right because you got a conservative on the bench.
But
nevertheless,
that was to replace a conservative that was more conservative on the bench. So
no,
there's been actually
Garland
no
is,
change.
Garland
If anything,
Garland is a loyal Trump.
He was a
Scalia.
He was a Scalia light. He is not as far right as Scalia was. So there's no shift in the balance.
But let's dive into this pool really quick. The Supreme Court just last week threw out all the maps in North Carolina because the lines were drawn on a racial basis. On a racial basis. And so
which is also being required by law, which is where I go, wait a second, you can't have it both ways.
Well, no. There are some instances where it's required. But all the lines in North Carolina, according to the court, were drawn based on the idea of racism. And we can't have that because otherwise we will keep having the type of political system we have now, and where little boys and girls who sitting home watching TV in the evening with their parents have to listen to a maniac on TV saying, "Oh my God, what do you have to lose?"
I get annoyed with Jimmy Fallon.
For those that do not know gerrymandering, explain that to the people that may not know. Educate them.
Well, you're talking about this, so go ahead.
So gerrymandering is essentially every 10 years we do a census, and based on the population numbers from a census, legislators are required at every state house across the country to redraw political districts. So that's House, Senate, and Congress. They're required to do that.
Right.
And so what has happened over time is the districts have become gerrymandered. Gerrymandered means pack the black districts and bleach the white districts. And so what you get a few black seats by way of the law. You get a few seats that are majority black, so the district population wise will be, say, 75% African American district. So you may get a few of them just to check a box. That's what the white court wanted to do. They wanted to check a box to get the black people out of their face. On the other hand, you have a majority of districts that are bleached white, and those districts tend to be Republicans. And so that has been the system in place for a very long time.
Yeah, actually, since our Constitution, because it's important to note that this is stuff that is actually written into the Constitution as the way we do things, and it's to make sure as far as to why we have districts and why
keep
we
in mind
right.
that doesn't make it right, because you got to remember during the days when the Constitution was written, it was written so that we didn't have a seat at the table. Let's keep it real.
Because what it sounds like is what he described is where it's giving districts by landmass instead of population. That's what that sounds like.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. It's given by population, not landmass, which is the real issue. Drawing district lines is a very, very difficult process. There's actually games you can play online to just figure out how hard it is to get an exact number of people in this box and an exact number of people in that box. But
the thing is that we oftentimes want to talk about this in all just racial lines. The reality is that it's most all gerrymandering that's going on is not about economic or racial lines. It's actually about partisan lines. If you're a Republican, you want to put other Republicans into your district,
And those
or
tend
if
to
you're
be
a
white.
Democrat, into Democratic districts, so you have an edge and you can keep your seats.
Okay.
So now that by default ends up, because your party systems have a lot of, if you're Christian, hey, the God only party. If you have a lot of white evangelical Christians, you're more likely to be Republican. Or if you're African American, I mean, it's basically 90% of African Americans are Democrats. So you know that you're going to end up, if you're drawing along a partisan line,
Right.
and drawing a seat for a Democrat, that you're going to have an overwhelming number of black people in it. If you have those options. And this is always a really kind of, I've struggled with this over the years trying to figure this out. When you make a determination that you want to have a district that's mostly black people, which means that we're going to have a black representative, which is a good thing. That also means that you are actually diluting the vote of African Americans in other districts. And so
I call it bleaching.
Well, which you can call bleaching, but that's actually being done intentionally. And on one hand, you can sit there and go, okay, that means that you have a firm, clear representative like Clyburn. But on the other hand, that means that in these other districts, they don't have to, which is going to be more by default because it is a majority versus a minority, that you have a whole bunch of different representatives that literally have no political vote advantage to caring one bit about a black issue or a minority issue.
Okay.
Because you do have to throw in Hispanics here.
So
for
I
example,
do
as
have
well.
a question. What about when things like gentrification take place, like when they do reconstruction of the city, they try to expand, and a lot of the people have to
What's
be pushed
happening in
out.
Charleston right now?
Right.
They pushed out all the black. They're pushing out all the blacks, and they can't afford it. And John is doing a good job of spraying air freshener in the air to make it smell good.
Wait.
No, but here's the
I'm not
reality.
making an argument.
No,
here.
you're not. But here's the stinky reality. Those things are done on the basis of race. I don't care how you cut it. It's purely race. And all I'm saying, and I'm saying this in a very bipartisan way, I think that some of our Democratic districts can still be won with a 55% BVAP. BVAP stands for Black Voting Age Population. That's how they draw these majority districts. Can still be won under that regard versus a 75 and 80%. And we have 9 Democratic seats when we really could have the ability to have 17, 18. It's a difference maker in our politics because now elections are won or decided in June in the primary versus having competitive general elections.
We'll be
We
back.
literally have 4 or 5 competitive state Senate seats in South Carolina.
Absolutely. We'll be back. Feel free to think freely.
And I'm not even going to try it. James, when you come back, you do your thing.
Other than yesterday, there's a today.
I didn't expect you to get it.
This is today by
Blanca.
James. We ain't no good at this, man. You got to come back here and do it. We can't have these songs for nothing.
No, I will say, just listening to it, because I'm not going to say it's race related, even though I think it was written from the premises of race at the beginning.
You don't have to say it. Sports are saying it for you everywhere.
Well, I will say it's economic driven, because if the people are too poor to stay in this area, when that area gets bought out and it starts expanding the business and the corporation in that area, and they start pushing people out of that area, it ain't gonna just be the blacks that leave. It's gonna be all the poor people that leave.
Let me tell you why it's race driven. You take Katrina Sheila's district over in Lexington County. She has part of Lexington downtown, but she also has Gilbert, Peely, and those places. Now, you make the economic argument. Those are not, I wouldn't even call those people middle class people. I mean, I'm not trying to talk belittling about it, but I wouldn't even call them middle class people. Yet they are extremely loyal Republican voters. Now, you would think that they would be the opposite. You would think, because we know they are on government programs, etc. But these people are the total opposite based on who they identify the Democratic Party as being, the all-black party.
Which I've got to go throw this out here is the only area I think it is strictly race is that it's being enforced by law. to be racial in areas. And it's only in the South that we have things like BVAP. That's actually something the government has to put together because of the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
So in those cases, it is purely a racial decision. Everywhere in these other cases, we're defending, or I think it's about people trying to protect their own power, both Republicans and Democrats.
Okay.
And so they're out there looking more importantly at which person's going to vote for me and drawing lines around how can I get my team to win more seats. And what happens is by default, since you have 90% of blacks voting for Democratic candidates, that by default that means that if you're a Republican legislature, you want to draw lines along racial barriers because it's the same thing as drawing along partisan, like Republican and Democrat lines. And
Well, I think it's very. I think that whole thing is important to kind of lead us to where we've been trying to get to for about 20 minutes. Is because through what we're talking about, that's how the senators and everybody who was
how
elected
we have the Congress makeup we have now
to appoint these people who make what we have going on. The people who are in that Senate, is it Intelligence Committee who's investigating?
Yeah.
Those people are people who are being helped, right, by the.
They are elected and they are in power because the Senate is a little different.
Yeah,
because the Senate is every state has 2 senators, and that's just population. That's just straight population.
Okay.
That's just everybody get a chance to vote. Okay. But the Congress is different. The Congress is all gerrymandered, very flawed system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Truthfully, I'm a big supporter of making the courts or allowing the courts to draw our lines because I think in most cases the court is supposed to put on a blindfold in the name of justice and be fair and balanced. Yeah. And if they operate under that notion, then we should have competitive seats and competitive lines.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure what system I'd like to see in place, whether or not to hand it over to the courts or not. There's always pros and cons to these things, but there isn't any question in my mind that the way that we do it today, we come up with things that really they don't make sense, and they are not the best representation.
Right.
And politics is interjected into it. And that's unfortunately the reality today. But we do have a Senate investigation committee going on.
Absolutely.
And we do have our
Back on air.
and I'm making sure that we waste the people's time and divert our attention from actually addressing the very real issues that our country faces, whether it be education or infrastructure or budgets or so on and so forth. Instead, we're spending day after day not discussing real important issues that actually affect people's lives. Instead, we're going on a public wild goose chase and witch hunt. That's just a distraction from us actually talking about real issues.
I agree about the distraction part, but that's who we have in the office, distracting chief. The 45th president is not commander in chief, but distracting chief. All you have to do is go take a cool stroll down his Twitter line any given day of the week. Whenever there's a major issue we're facing that has direct impact on him and really exposing him for who he really is, he tends to tweet things to distract the mainstream media that you bash from, and because they go and tell the truth. Now here's the reality. I agree with you. We are getting away from talking about the real issues.
We are.
But in a strange way, that's good. Because
Which is what the mainstream media and the liberal Democrats want.
I don't want this Republican nutjob Congress passing healthcare laws that would literally put over 24 million people off healthcare. I don't want them passing a healthcare law that would literally go take things back to where they were before Barack Obama passed the historic landmark legislation of the Affordable Care Act. But instead, we're here. We're here because the Russians President Trump's friends have influenced our elections.
Obviously, I was making a joke about that earlier.
Well, we
Not
know,
being serious.
we know for sure.
We've already established in multiple of these committee hearings and testimonies that did not change the vote count at all, and we'd have Donald. Trump either way.
We haven't announced.
And
We have that has not been
that's been testified on.
that has not been proven. No one can prove that. What we do know is
been
that
investigated and proven. The vote count was the vote.
Well, we're not through with the investigation, so it hasn't been proven. But we do know they hacked into our elections. What we do know is Donald Trump has ties to the Russians based on things we have learned through these committees. What we do know, he refuses to.
Hillary Clinton had ties to the Russians too.
Not at the same tune as Mr. Trump.
But and
really
actually, you're right. It was actually to millions of dollars more, where the Russians were funneling money and selling off, and they were selling off our uranium to the Russians. So I mean, ultimately, Clinton is just as guilty, if not much more so, of anything that you could try to throw at Donald Trump on this.
Alternative fact horn, John.
So
but here's what we do know. We don't know how in depth Mr. Trump is embedded to the Russians because he won't release his taxes. What we do know is I think
it's wild speculation to imply that he's actually indebted to the Russians at all. So far, from what I've seen, we have a rockier relationship with Russia than we ever have. Part of that is because Donald Trump has basically not kowtowed, unlike Barack Obama, to the Vladimir Putin a single time.
John, that's simply not true. We've had Republicans on your side begging this man to denounce Putin. We've had proof in the pudding that his folks, people close to him, have had continuous meetings. The reason we're having a hearing tomorrow is because Director Comey, under oath, just last week talked about there was a third meeting between your racist Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Russian ambassador. We keep hearing these ongoing drips about Mr. Trump and his campaign team's ties to Russia. Does the name General Flynn ring a bell?
You're talking about an administration that was in transition, that's going to become and became the world leader as president in their administration. If we were investigating the Chinese, for example, rather than Russia, do you think for a moment that there haven't been a ton of meetings between those administration officials that were transferring into office and the Chinese? Absolutely, there were. And several other countries, because they had a responsibility to be trying to sort out the mess they were handed, and even if there wasn't a mess, even if it was great, whatever they were handed coming into office, they need to have open lines of communication between those and those other world powers that they're going to now have to deal with.
Well, maybe I'm crazy, and maybe I'm on Pluto, but I don't think we had hearings from the Obama transition. I don't think we had hearings.
That's, again, my point, actually. If we were investigating any of these things, you would have been seeing meetings between elected officials.
We didn't even have this to worry about, even during the Bush administration. If you want to talk about the transfer of power, we didn't have the ideas to worry about that the campaign led by Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton had some business ties to Russia, that their staffers were colluding with Russia to hack the elections. There was John, literally, and you know this, we would be all right, like in some political war right now, if Barack Obama's campaign team would have had a thought about colluding with Russians to hack the elections against John McCain. You know this for a fact. That's why you laugh.
What you actually have here, except it's so much
other than collusion.
Well, it's so much bigger.
Collusion.
In some ways, I feel like this is some serious karma coming back to bite President Trump
about the birth,
because he came out there and tried to delegitimize Barack Obama's presidency and President Obama over this whole birther movement, and he continued to do that. And what he's got now is a bunch of people, because Russia went out there and messed with an election which he had no control or power over.
You don't know that.
He was. Well, either
what we do know from what we do
so
know
now
from
there's a concerted. There's collusion to delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency.
Right.
Just like, and so, karma is, a little bit of an itch.
What we do know, because of testimony under oath, that the Russians did not want Hillary Clinton to be president. So they did everything they could to delegitimize her candidacy. So whether that was spread fake news. I guess
that's probably because Hillary was trying to blackmail them too much. It was like they didn't have enough millions of dollars.
Wow. Blackmail how?
I'm making a joke.
I guess my thing is, this could. It seemed like this is something that could have happened before with some other presidencies. I mean, when you look at how what the Russians did with France, what the Russians did, I guess.
But David, we would have known if it would have impacted any election, particularly the 92, 96, 08, or 12 election.
Right.
Trust me when I tell you, my friend, there would have been planes flying around, banners saying Russians help Democrats take over the White House. I guarantee you. But we didn't have that.
Well, I guess it's because the recusal kind of gave this thing a lot of legs.
Because the candidates who were running during that time period were not in bed with the Russians. If you remember a few weeks ago, and this flew on the radar screen because Trump tweeted immediately to take the distraction off of it when they talked about his lawyer viewed the tax returns. And he talked about there was a possible. Well, he didn't say there was no ties to Russia. You remember that? You remember this conversation?
Yeah, I remember.
He said there was over the years there's been some dealings with Russia, but wouldn't go into detail. Now, yet we still haven't seen those tax returns.
Well, I would say I'm not gonna say it never happened before. The thing is, Donald Trump just too stupid to not use Twitter. I mean, let's be honest. That's the thing. The reason these things are on the table right now is because we have access to social media, Twitter, and everything. As soon as it happened, we got access to something.
But you know why we have access to this stuff? Thank God for leakers. Because had we not had leakers right now exposing this administration from General Flynn to what was his campaign about?
In
Paul
other words,
Manafort?
thank goodness for people intentionally sabotaging and trying to leak both real and false information with a particular agenda meant to destroy somebody's presidency because they're disgruntled in some form.
They work for him.
So but I got to tell you,
and these people put country before politics, and I appreciate that.
Well, with the Twitter, man, I used to have mixed feelings about his Twitter account, but anymore, every once in a while I have a bad day, and I'm real thankful for President Trump's Twitter because I know if I open it up,
you're gonna laugh.
I'm gonna start laughing. And my day just got a little bit brighter.
After House of Cards, though, I will say it's funny. I wonder if they wrote that after if they wrote the last 3 episodes of House of Cards. After he became president.
I think you're onto something. I do have a theory that is exactly what they did. That they altered the script afterwards because the other House of Cards all came out right around February.
Yeah, Valentine's.
And exactly, and then they bumped this one up a few months and kind of got past that first 100 days. And I'm pretty certain that they started to incorporate some of what was going on.
It took a very quick turn to where he said, I need to control how I go down. And it looks like that's what Trump does with his Twitter, which is
let's not get distracted here. Let's not let John distract us from the real issues. Because here's the real issues. Last week, under oath, the former FBI director testified under oath, right in the Bible, that number one, testified that Trump was a liar. He said that multiple times. Number two, he talked about him trying to influence him to drop the investigation of General Flynn. He mentioned another one of Trump's lies. Remember, Mr. Trump said that Mr. Comey contacted him about the dinner meeting. Well, under oath, he said that was a lie. He said that Trump contacted him about a meeting, had to cancel dinner with his wife, asked the VP, asked the Attorney General to leave the room, and basically tried to influence him to stop the investigation with Mr. Flynn.
Basically.
He also said...
It's an important word there.
He also said... Well, I'm saying basically because I'm not giving it word for word.
Well,
and he also said that he lost his job because of what was going on with the Russia investigation and how him losing his job would have made the conclusion different.
Well,
all those things were under oath.
I'm glad we brought up Comey. Because first thing, I am really upset with President Trump and really glad that President Trump fired Comey. Where I'm upset is that he should have fired Comey day one in office. It should have been within the first 24 hours that man was kicked out of his job.
I don't know about that.
Absolutely, without a single doubt. Because I want to start because we kind of forget the actual history of this guy through the last year and a half. Here's a guy who got up
and called Hillary Clinton the election
during the Hillary Clinton investigation of her emails, and he goes in front of the American people and he says, okay, Hillary Clinton broke the law this way, broke the law that way, broke the law the other way. Then he goes, but she didn't really break the law, which is a little bit of a head scratcher because you just told us how she broke the law. But then, so we're not going to go prosecute her. Okay, confusing and starts to look like you're playing games. Then a little while later, he goes and says, okay, I'm investigating her emails. So I'm going to reopen the investigation that I closed down after telling everyone that she broke the law but didn't break the law, right? And then a few days later, go ahead and say, oh, when it wasn't even possible to go through all the emails, okay, I went through all the emails, she's innocent again. Just, if anybody was messing with the election, it was Comey. And then he goes up just the other day, and it's so inconsistent that if it wasn't that he's consistently been this inconsistent, it would be unbelievable. But he goes up there and he says, okay, President Trump kind of told me that he kind of obstructed justice, and he kind of told me to go ahead and stop doing this investigation on Flynn and in Russia. But he didn't actually tell me that. And I kind of wrote the stuff down because I kind of felt like he did, but he didn't really do it. So he almost broke the law and kind of broke the law, but he didn't actually break the law. I mean,
you did a good job of confusing me just now. I'm all over
the entire way through.
He broke the law. He broke the law, but proving it is going to be the challenge. He broke the law, which is why Mr. Comey took the note.
No,
what he did not do during the election.
He clearly said under oath that no, he didn't. The reason he didn't report this was because he did not feel like President Trump had obstructed justice. But at the exact same time, he's saying, well, I wrote this down because I kind of felt like he obstructed justice. And this has been the absolute, this man has done by far the worst job as FBI director that there has ever been seen, and has misled and confused the American public time and time again. And you know what? Almost any Democrat out there should agree with me that he should have been fired day one, because if anyone potentially cost Hillary Clinton the election, it was him, in his complete inability to show any courage and any leadership anywhere or at any part of this process. And I mean, honestly, I don't know, when you have somebody who's waffled that much and given us so many different indications, how you could possibly trust that man.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of Mr. Comey's actions. I'm not, because I do think he was part of the reason why Secretary Clinton lost. But the reason why Donald Trump did not fire Mr. Comey on day one, because what Mr. Comey did not do during the election was notify the American people that Trump's campaign was under investigation, as we now know, based on testimony under oath from a number of people about their collusion with Russians. So that's the reason he probably didn't fire him on day one. And number two, it was all about loyalty. And Mr. Trump wanted to run this country like a business, so he figured he can call an employee in the room, tell everybody else to leave, and say, you know what, I need you to be loyal to me. That's kind of what that whole mentality of Mr. Trump and people like him feel. You know what I mean? They feel like they can tell people what they do because they have power and influence. And Comey, unfortunately, just didn't take his crap.
Just like building inspectors, I guess, back in the day for him.
I'm not touching that one. All right, but I'll give you another example of Comey. Seriously, I don't believe you can trust a word out of that man's mouth. Here's a guy. Here's a guy.
Praising him when he was.
Here's a guy. By the way, I have never praised him. I've been upset with him from day one when he got up there and actually said Hillary Clinton broke the law. Clearly. He said that. I mean, you can play the tape and then say, but I'm not going to prosecute her. What is that?
But John, you had Republicans, including the President of the United States, who was the candidate at the time, was praising Comey for the speed of his drill, putting the screws to Hillary Clinton candidacy every chance he got. They were praising him. Oh my God,
I wasn't one of those.
He's a great guy.
What I will say here is this is what he said under oath, which you just got to kind of scratch your head about. Is he goes, okay, well, Trump tweeted out that, I hope they have tapes in a Trump-like fashion, right? And then he goes, okay, so because he was worried that Trump might have tapes, he wanted to go ahead and release his notes of the conversation, and so he gave it to a professor friend to leak out to the New York Times, right? So that he would make sure to have the truth out there, since Trump might go ahead and leak these tapes.
Now, I was going to bring that up because I was going to ask about that. Isn't it illegal for the president to tape conversations in private conversations in the office?
No, he clearly actually the biggest proof of that is Nixon taped everything, and there wasn't anything illegal about him taping it all. It just got him in trouble because he was dumb enough to tape it all. But but with Comey, there's a real inconsistency if you think about it here. You're saying you want to make sure that you have your side of the story out there because you're worried that he's going to release tapes of the exact conversation. I believe that Comey knew exactly the truth here, that there was no tapes and there are no tapes of that conversation. So what he actually wanted to do was release a disgruntled employee that's mad that he got fired, release his side of a one-sided position on this with a specific intent to damage the president.
John, that's not true. What he said was he released the tapes because he knew the president of the United States was going to lie about it. That's what he said under oath. And
he said this is why he said he leaked. He said
he leaked it.
He leaked it to his friend because of the tape comment that there were tapes about it, and he wanted his side there. There's an inconsistency.
The quote is online. He said he figured or he knew the president would lie about it. But following up on one point, if there was any inconsistency with Mr. Comey's testimony or any notion that he gave some alternative fact on oath, you can best believe the fire would have been so hot to his butt after that testimony, they would have been saying lock him up, the GOP senator. So what most of them know, what all of them know on that committee, including the one who spoke yesterday, is that nothing Mr. Comey said is not true. And what they know is that everything he said is true about the president of the United States under oath. That's why you haven't seen a firestorm saying, oh, he's inconsistent. You haven't heard that from anybody.
First thing, I'm not saying that he lied. I'm saying that his motivation here couldn't have been what he said. His motivation was because there would have been an exact record of the exchange. What it does, it actually speaks to what his motivation is, and his motivation at this point as a disgruntled former employee that has essentially been disgraced now, as he should be because of a complete lack of leadership.
It's not true.
Is that he is actively trying to take down this president. He actively was trying to initiate a special prosecutor in this case because he ultimately wants to take Trump down. That's what he wants to do at this point.
That's one way to look at it, right?
As a private citizen, Mr. Comey has the right to do what the heck he wants to do. Number two, during his time in office, GOP nor Republicans have ever said any of the misinformation John has given about how bad Mr. Comey is. In fact, he's had high praise on both sides out, even from Democrats, even during the Hillary Clinton mess.
There was a time when I remember seeing a lot of clips of Republicans who love some Comey.
There's absolutely been times that Republicans have said that they love Comey. There's been times that they've been mad at Comey. There's been times that Hillary Clinton there's been time that the Democratic camp was very pro Comey. Keep in mind, Comey was a Obama appointee, and then there's been times that they've been very anti Comey. There's been a mixed bag, which is no surprise when you have an individual who has failed to ever show courageous leadership in any step of this process.
I'm not sure though, John, because here's the thing: there's two ways to look at what you're saying. One way you're like, okay, he's doing this because he feels like there might be tape against him. He doesn't want to be misrepresented because of that. Or he could be a person that knows how Washington works and knows how well they can doctor those tapes.
Well, here's
Just saying.
I'm not going to touch that. If that's maybe what he was thinking, he thinks that they were going to put out a completely fraudulent tape.
I really want to know the truth.
That's an interesting theory.
I'm being very transparent with you. Prior to this election, I didn't hear a peep and Tom about who Comey was or what he did. Yeah. Because the FBI was one of those agencies, one of those things that you just didn't hear.
You didn't know what they were doing, yeah.
So most people could not tell you who James Comey was prior to this election. So what you're saying is not true. And number two, what we learned in his testimony the other day, John, was that he met with President Obama during the course of his time twice. I think Bush once, never took notes. During the course of this presidency, he met with him like 7 times. Wow. So that ought to tell you about how Mr. Trump was trying to influence what the sacred cow called the FBI, the sacred cow, and the sacred agency head, how he was trying to use his power as president to influence that. Obama never summoned Comey for meetings. He never had to.
You're trying to tell me that I don't know where you're getting those facts from. I'm not going to dispute them because I don't know if that's true or not.
Testimony under oath last week.
I didn't catch that as far as to him only having two meetings with President Obama, though. I start to have to actually wonder why there would be that little communication between President Obama. But at the same time, that's not a huge surprise because President Obama had a lack of meeting with important people like his general in Afghanistan. You
need to
he
because
doesn't.
he wasn't.
Apparently he thinks it's not important to meet with the heads of major agencies
what
that are
would you say about
following.
President Bush? Because he said Comey said under testimony, under the oath the other day that he only met with Bush, I think, one or two times.
Yeah,
in his presidency.
but see that makes sense because he wasn't the FBI director under Bush. That was Mueller, and even with
Comey came in,
but Comey was a deputy. He wasn't the director of the FBI under George W.
The point
he came in after Mueller. Mueller served through an extra portion of Barack Obama's term. So basically, Comey was only director of the FBI for about 3 years of Barack Obama's presidency.
Right, but the point he was making was it is very uncommon for a president to meet with to request meetings with the FBI director. That was the overall general message.
Yeah, and I think it's also understandable that it's also very uncommon for your administration to be having a witch hunt media hatchet job going after you left and right.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, there's not normally congressional investigations that are going on. So, at the end of the day, it makes sense.
It's not normal for an administration to be this crooked and disastrous as this administration has been, and we're not even 7 months into the presidency. That's what's so scary. Lord have mercy. We're not even 7 months into this thing yet.
I will say, if they're not making America great, they're making free thinkers great.
Absolutely. By the way, shouts out to everybody commenting and everything on Facebook Live here. Jonathan Weston, who y'all might know him. He's the owner of the Carolina Cougars here, the ABA basketball team here. He says Trump's behavior opens him up to being taken down. Why are we focusing on everyone's response to a really off-script and ill-prepared president? We have lowered the bar so low of what we expect from the president. Is that true? I would wonder. That's the part I was wondering. Have we really lowered the bar at what we expect as far as?
I think the Republican Party has. And I think that's why you see Democrats and most reasonable people who want to keep the level, keep the expectations high for the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief of the United States. That's why it's not okay. It's not okay for the president to govern our country with 140 characters on Twitter. It's not for him to propose a budget that will cut programs for senior citizens called Meals on Wheels. It's not okay for him to cut after-school programs for kids who we know need it. It's not okay for him to cut agencies back like the EPA, and when you got people in Flint, Michigan who don't have clean running water. All those things are just not okay. And so there are people who are resistant for the culture. Thank y'all for the culture. Who are resistant because they know it's not okay. And oddly enough, there are some moderate, reasonable Republicans, unlike my friend John Parker, who really know that this is just not okay for the future of this country because we're going down a very dark and dangerous road. And if we're not careful, this will be a new norm and generations, literally, generations of people will suffer because of the actions of this generation.
I will say one thing this has done is made the Republican Party very, very, it almost looks disorganized. It's like it's very divided right now.
No, they've always been that way. This is just exposed it.
The Republican Party and what's not talked about very often, the Democratic Party as well, are going through, our nation and our parties are going through a transformative time. I mean, in the Democratic Party, it's a little bit more clear cut. You have a Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party and a Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, and they need to find new footing in that scenario. And in the Republican Party, you have a lot of different groups, whether it be libertarian-leaning, Trump publicans, if you will, the Tea Parties, all of these different things. And our nation, and part of the takeaway from Donald Trump's election is that our nation is tired of the same old, the scripted politicians, the politicians who promise change, and then it's more of the same. And so when change didn't work, when they elected President Obama, they decided, okay, we'll try a different change.
Don't do that. If you don't believe,
but that's because
John, I can't get.
No, you know what happened with Trump's election. I agree with you. Was a change election because you had a certain group of people, working class white people, who felt like their lives have not changed because they were used to this. And because the new norm is this, and they got frustrated, And so they came out, and then you had
It
the
was the
uneducated.
same. It was the same working class white people that voted in Michigan that elected President Obama.
I agree
It's
with
the exact same people. They wanted change
I
then,
agree
and they
with you.
didn't get it now. They want change now, and I don't think that they're getting it quite yet now because we aren't doing anything other than talking about Russia.
But here's the difference. In this election, it was a change election because you had a new wave of voters who have not been involved in the electoral process for a very long time. I call it the uneducated.
That's actually one of the things that, as you break down the national data, that you actually find is that there were, and Trump himself wants to always promote this line that there was all these new people that never voted and so on and so forth. That when you really break down the numbers nationally, there wasn't any dramatic sea change here of new voters that were there.
I don't know.
This is pure fact. There were several hundreds of thousands, maybe close to 1 million voters who did not vote in the previous two presidential
when you
elections, the McCain election and the Romney election.
and you can.
And so those people were kind of off the radar screen, but they showed up.
But I mean, there's always those kind of numbers because you have new people that vote, people who die off, and then you have people that go ahead and get re-engaged.
We didn't see those numbers. We haven't seen those numbers. We didn't see them on our side until Barack Obama came along.
There's an example. In that election, you had different folks come in. When you look at the actual percentage of the millions of people who vote in this country, there were definitely, don't get me wrong, there were definitely new people that hadn't been voting that decided to come out and
Trump
vote for
called
this.
them his uneducated voters.
I
will say,
it wasn't the dramatic number.
I will say it brings up the question of how educated are we when it comes to the election process and how our parties operate. Because like I said, this government right now, this system right now is really exposing us.
Most people knew from day one that this man was not good for the country. I mean, no disrespect to my friend John. I love this brother to death. But at the end of the day, John is a very smart. He's a very smart political. I will say that to I would say it to anybody, and he knows that this was.
He's all right himself.
This is one of the first elections in which we had a candidate on either side that did not talk about one single freaking issue.
They just
he did talk about one issue.
Yeah.
Build the wall.
Yeah.
Immigration.
I mean, literally.
And then he
so
just
that Jay Will says more about the people who voted for him than necessarily about our
Did
political.
he just give the scholarship to a couple thousand immigrants to a working? I saw it in Washington Post today that he actually just paid a couple, I think about 100,000 immigrants to have their green cards to work in America right now. And the Donald Trump administration
paid to get some green cards working.
Yeah, get green cards workers. And I mean,
we'll be looking that up. Y'all look that up on Facebook Live. Shouts out once again to the people on Facebook Live. Nikki Thomas says,
Nikki,
"You're right, Blue Zippy. I'm disagreeing with Blue Button Down." Thank you much. Now, Curtis Agman Badu says Democrats are to blame too. We don't recognize that there's an argument to be made and that we need to make it.
No, I agree with Curtis. You know what argument we have to make going forward? We have to make an economic argument. We didn't do that in this last election. I love Secretary Clinton. I'm in full transparency, so there won't be anything. I was a part of that team.
No, you can't.
But we didn't make the hard case on the economic sale from our perspective. Barack Obama did wonders for this economy. Historic record job growth every month. He literally saved this economy, saved out. We didn't make the argument about how do we continue to build upon that. And so while we were trying to get cute in our messaging, talking about green jobs, Trump, the nut job he was out here just talking to regular people in Walmart, Hardee's, and Waffle House saying, regular job. Our job. And so we didn't have a true economic message. We wasn't talking about how you rebuild the middle class like we need to. The Joe Biden message would have connected well with voters in the swing states that Hillary Clinton lost. Joe Biden, I call him the middle class champion.
I agree with Antjuan 100% on this, that the message from the Hillary Clinton campaign just absolutely failed. They didn't address the needs of many people. Instead, and unfortunately, I truly do not believe that the Democratic Party has acknowledged this yet because they just want to hate on Trump rather than actually looking in the mirror, they decided to make that election about identity politics, that it's pitting this person against that person, that it's rich, poor, that it's black, white, that it's police versus non-police,
Right.
that is about gay marriage versus heterosexual, that it's women versus men. It's all of these division, identity politics type things, instead of actually addressing all of the issues that honestly unite all of us and that we all care about. And Bill Clinton actually kind of said it best, because an example was with Obamacare, which Democrats and Republicans do agree across the board that Obamacare is not perfect, no matter who you are, and that there are problems. I'm not arguing whether there's good or bad, but there are problems with it. And Bill Clinton pointed it out better than really I've heard any Republican do it. It's absolutely crazy that if you're a lower middle class person that's out there busting your hump 40, 60 hours a week at 1 to 2 jobs, that you're really working for to provide for your family, that you walked away from Obamacare where you were paying up to double the amount in your premiums, getting worse care, and then the person who was working 20 hours a week was walking away with better health care than you and not paying a dime for it. That is a crazy system there that at least doesn't speak to the people that are in that system, in that situation. And I'm not arguing. Understand, I'm not arguing that the person shouldn't be getting great, stellar health care if they're working 20 hours. But I am arguing that if you're a working class person that was out there in those toughest jobs, those barely livable incomes, that you hurt from that, and of course you're gonna have a reaction to that situation because you're going, wait, this is not fair.
Well, part of that is because we have states like South Carolina, we have these right-wing Republican governors who refuse to expand Medicaid. So when you talk about the hard-working men and women who are working 2 jobs, who forget about trying to make ends meet, they're putting 2 ends together, hoping they will meet. Right. They cannot get access to affordable quality health care if you live in certain parts of our state because the hospitals closed because the Republican governor refused to expand Medicaid, or 2, because we didn't expand Medicaid, they do not have access to health insurance because they simply can't afford it.
Yeah.
Well, so I agree that there were some flaws with the system, and I agree with you, John, that we didn't have necessarily the right message. But here's the thing: I appreciate Secretary Clinton's candidacy because she exposed. Her campaign gave America a preview for what we're experiencing right now. And truthfully, in this country, in politics, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We could have exposed Mr. Trump for who he is, but also have a message that would say, while this is who Mr. Trump is, this is where we need to be. And we tried to get there. I do not believe she did not try to get there. I think her and the campaign made an honest effort. Yeah, unfortunately, they did. In some states, that message didn't connect well because those people were so far buried, so deep because of the Bush administration and the recession, they never fully recovered and been whole again, and so it's been difficult for them.
But it's beyond the Bush administration recession stuff. You are looking at a situation that it wasn't a state like South Carolina that made the difference here. It was a state like Michigan where you were talking about working class people. The Democrats have a real issue here that they really want to spend every waking moment with an anti-Trump message. Everything is how awful Donald Trump is. That is not a sufficient message. They need to offer a solution and something to unite behind. When you look at what the Tea Party, what happened as a result of Barack Obama's presidency is you had this sudden surgence of the Tea Party, right? Mm-hmm. And the Tea Party certainly was in part a reaction to President Obama's election. It was even more so a reaction to the omnibus stimulus policies, and then after that, the Obamacare. And that's what they united around against. But with that, they also did unite around an idea of being for something. It was not a purely anti-Obamacare thing. Ooh. It was...
No, we didn't.
And they also, I want to throw out, they changed their own party more so than they were trying to change the general election.
The nut jobs took over the Republican Party. But the Tea Party's notion in 2010 was all about saying no to everything President Obama did, which is what the Democrats are doing right now.
They united around an idea.
No.
They weren't worried about pro-life and pro-choice issues. They weren't worried about gay marriage and those issues. They weren't worried about all these different types of issues. They united around a single issue, which was fiscal conservative issues. That we are spending too much money in government and that we are taxed enough already. Which is what Tea Party came from. They came around a single idea. The continued politics of the Democratic Party, the continued politics of the Democratic Party right now of dividing and talking about this and that and the other is not a unifying message they need to carry them across the line in the future.
Tea Party was tear everything apart. That's what Tea Party stood for, because that's what they wanted to do. They simply wanted to say no for everything President Obama did. If you remember, and I'm a student of politics, so I know, if you remember and you look back at interviews during the Tea Party movement when it was starting to come together, Sarah Palin's crazy self, if you asked them what they were for, nobody could tell you what they were for. They were just going to say, they met the day of the Barack Obama's inauguration and said, we are going to try to make him a one-term president, and we're going to say no to everything he proposed. That's a fact.
That didn't work out well, did it?
That actually is my exact point. Is that, okay, you have the Tea Party that comes together immediately in reaction to Barack Obama. But then what does that become? That becomes we don't want the stimulus bill. This is way too much wasteful spending. Then it becomes, we don't want Obamacare. With the Trump thing here, you had a huge protest immediately after Donald Trump's election. But what have they actually stood up against since then? And all that it is we don't like Donald Trump policies. It is still just we don't like Donald Trump. They haven't actually attached themselves to any issues, any ideas that bring people together and work.
One thing I would say, as we finish the show, I want to say this part, which is, I think they more figured out voters. Like there's a lot of what you're saying, what they did here, and there's a lot of specifics in there. But ideology-wise, I think they figured out the voters in their customer base, in their customer state.
They're playing.
Yeah, a lot of this is marketing. When you look at it, there's you play the percentages. There's more opposition. There's more dissatisfied people than satisfied people. And I say that basically in response to Jonathan Weston here said, "What does change really mean to you?" Ask each person. Let's be honest, it's really just a dog whistle. Now, if you use it that way, if you use it that way, and you look at the rise of the Tea Party, you look at the Obama, you look at Obama and the reaction to the Bush campaign, you look at Tea Party in reaction to Obama, you look at Trump in reaction to Obamacare, now when you put all that together, you look at people who are saying all we have to do is make a message to say, hey, if you're dissatisfied, cast your vote this way.
All we have to do is play on the
is that what it looks like?
The unintelligence of people and the ignorance of people.
Yeah.
That's not saying that in a bad way. But literally, I was skeptical of the whole change message for Barack Obama. Luckily, in the end, because he never
clarified it either, just like Donald Trump. Neither one of them actually clarified what they wanted. They kept it as broad and where you could just go ahead and imagine what it was kind of, hey, vote for me, I'll give you whatever you want. It's going to be a change to the good. Right. What does that mean? Doesn't matter, it'll be good. Yeah. And they both kept it incredibly, incredibly broad. And you actually just pointed out what I was saying, which is after Barack Obama, there was the Tea Party. What is there after Donald Trump? There isn't some kind of organization here. There isn't any kind of identity that the Democrats have. There's no identifiable thing that they're rallying all of those dissatisfied people around. Mm-hmm. The Democrats, if they really want to be successful, they need to figure out their customer base and they need to move forward with an actual agenda, which is not happening right now. So I really shouldn't be doing this. I'm giving the other side some free advice, but you guys better get it together.
Kellyanne said something similar, I think.
I think our congregation are starting to line back up in our churches as far as Democrats. I believe our congregation is starting to come back home to church.
Absolutely.
Because I think they see what's going on. They see the impact for people who stayed home, for people who were somehow drunk and delusional, that if they set this election out because they supported Bernie Sanders in the primary versus Hillary Clinton, that was somehow going to make things better for them. But at the end of the day, I think people see it. And that's why you see people, millions of people, all over this country doing it for the culture. They're resisting. They're showing up at rallies. They're showing up at meetings. And I think that is going to be a determining factor in elections 2018. 2018 will probably be, and I'm saying probably, the most consequential midterm election.
Oh, don't say that again.
Probably. No, I'm saying.
I remember what happened last time you said that.
No, I mean that. Think about it. Yeah. We will have 32 governorships up.
Ooh.
25 Senate seats, I think it is. 10 of them in states that Democrats hold that Trump won.
Other way around, it's 15.
15, yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly Democrats. You guys are going to have a very, very hard time.
And every member of Congress will be up.
Wow.
That is going to be a very, very determinant election for the future of our politics.
Absolutely.
And we'll see if the Democrats can get their act together and really motivate voters. Say, hey,
And
that's the problem.
I encourage Mr. Trump, keep doing what you're doing.
And like that,
Keep doing what you're doing.
Hey.
Freethinkers Radio.
Absolutely. Just everybody know that we're gonna do a politics show with Mr. Antjuan Seawright every
Once a month.
Once a month. And the reason for that is we're not gonna wait until election season. Like I'm be honest. It's full disclosure, full transparency. I do feel badly about how we handled the presidential election from this network standpoint. And the reason I say is because we waited way too late.
Well,
at the end of the day,
I think you've mentioned that that you guys weren't really focused on the primaries at the time, and as Antjuan talks about, I mean seriously, in the state of South Carolina, and as one of a number of places in particular, most of the decisions, as far as to who is going to represent us, they are made on the primary level. Absolutely. It is not November; it's actually June in this state that we decide who our real leaders are.
Absolutely. I'm gonna ask one more question before we go back, because I know we're trying to hurry up and get out of here. I'm sorry, this question is burning. I have to ask it. This is not, and this is for both of you. From a political strategist standpoint, Donald Trump is currently president, but I remember the prior candidate, Donald Trump. He had no chance. It wasn't even like a close. Did he make the first debate or something like that? Am I tripping? 'Cause I remember seeing him on a stage. He made a debate, and that was like it. It was like him standing next to Al Sharpton or something like that. It was like, you know what I'm saying? This is his first time running for president. How did he come across so strong this time when he was such a loser? The other one, maybe 2 times he ran. Maybe he only ran once.
He only talked. He talked about it. He threw it out there to help his brand the first couple times.
Okay.
He never really announced a candidacy, open up an account. He never really did.
He was just toying with the idea of getting the media exposure. But this time he full on ran.
But even this time, I always said, and I'm very careful about my words. I've learned that in my old young age of 32. I said I was cautiously optimistic about Secretary Clinton, but I said things had to fall in place. Because I know that most people in our country hate government. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, they hate government. They're just anti-government. Because you have people who feel like government is just to help the poor black people who want to suck off the government dime, and then you have other people who feel like government hadn't done enough for me. And so because of that, people just have a disdain or just a real hate for government.
Well, and we all have to deal with the DMV, and that just kind of sucks. Even though the DMV has actually gotten better, but it's just one of those things that we all know how much dealing with government is not fun. And ultimately, what does government do beyond when they're giving you money or something like that, or taking your money? Basically, the function of government is to tell us, in a sense, a big part of whenever you create a law, you are taking away freedom in some form. You're telling somebody what to do.
Right.
And if you look like me, or if you are a black and brown person in this country from a community of color, you know that government traditionally over the years have not been your friend. There are still communities who look like me. Black and brown boys and girls are locked up at higher rates than people who do not look like them. We still, when the unemployment rate in most communities is 10%, it's usually double that in our community. We have usually some of the worst roads in our community. Some of our schools are usually the most terrible. And so government, for a lot of people, have not been our friend over the years. And so you have a lot of disdain for government. Police officers tend to be in our communities than others. We tend to get higher sentences, rates than other people.
A lot more pollution.
All those things. Flint, Michigan is another example. All those things. So people are frustrated. And I fundamentally believe that's why you have so many people sitting out elections. You have so many people just say, I don't want anything to do with it. So many people say, I don't care about what's going on in my politics. My vote don't count. Because they haven't really seen the benefits of putting their faith into a system called government.
Right. I get it. And you know what? We're going to end up having some on some of these shows, we're going to need, because we didn't get a chance to deal with some of the local things we have
Yeah.
going on here. We got some things going on with our roads that we're going to deal with next time we have you guys on with our roads,
just
school
today.
buses.
Just today, the governor vetoed 20
School buses.
vetoed millions of dollars that would go to buying new school buses in our state, and so
Right.
that's a big deal.
That's
that
a
is
big
big
deal.
deal.
And then, and ultimately, Superintendent Spearman has made it clear from the beginning of her campaign that student safety is a top priority for her administration, and having safe buses is part of keeping your students and our children safe.
Absolutely.
And so it was disappointing to see Governor McMaster make that decision, but ultimately, I have full faith that the Republican legislature will override the good governor's veto on that, and that we'll still get our new buses as we should.
And
That
John,
would
you
be
may
good,
Right.
though.
And here's the reason why he may be right. And it was only because a bus caught fire in the upstate in a very Republican district just a few weeks ago. And so that became the sound the alarm issue. But for many years, I know since I've been involved, been up at the State House, which was in 2008 up until now, for many years, the senator who represents this area where we sit, John Scott, has been a strong advocate for making sure we get new buses in South Carolina, school buses. And every year during the budget process, when he makes the argument, the Republicans will literally vote down his proviso to put money to get new school buses. But only because a school bus burned up carrying, I hate to say this, John, don't take this the wrong way, carrying white kids in the upstate. That made it a sound the alarm issue for us to say we got to do something about school buses.
As a former bus driver, though, you got to look at it too from the standpoint of like during the summer months. That during the month of August and the beginning of the school year, and like most likely through the halfway mark of September, sometimes through the end of September, those buses are the hottest things you ever want to be on. And it's like these kids, as a driver, you're sweating. You gotta, and you have to be comfortable, and then you have these the kids, 50, 60 kids behind you. That's hot. This hot air is coming in the bus, so it is very much so needed because just to keep the cool, just to keep the calm of the children, because they like when you're hot, man.
They don't know how that.
You kids go crazy if it's
Well,
hot.
not to mention, you got a lot of kids when they're coming from home, they're coming from reckless situations. God knows what happened that night. When they're going home, they're going back to those situations. A lot of, what's on the mind of a lot of those kids is, how am I going to eat tonight? And so you have all that going on. So that's a distraction. So they are just figuring it out. So they're distracting the drivers. And then you have buses rolling on some of the worst roads in the country.
True.
Wear and tear every day.
That's true.
120 some odd days a year, and in some cases more because you got summer school in which the buses are running. And so when you pound and pound on something, for a very long time, it's going to have extensive wear and tear, and eventually that's going to break.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think some of them buses are like since '88. I drove one that was like I rode it. It's like one of the buses I rode when I was going to school. You know what I mean? It's like a 1988 bus. Like this bus should not be on the road at all. And then it breaks. If you break down, you gotta call. You gotta wait for people to come. You can't do nothing. So it's those buses.
Most people
like
won't ride around in a
Ultimately-
1988 car.
Ultimately, there are a couple things I'd like to point out, and I fortunately, regardless of the reason why, and I can tell you personally, I've been pro an update to the
Hold on a second, John. Add this to your answer, because there's a question I know it's probably going to be part of how you're about to answer this. It says, Terry Height says, what happened to the lottery money going toward the purchase of buses as well as
That's why he vetoed it.
That's exactly that's exactly why he vetoed it, and it's very important to note that Governor McMaster is supportive of upgrading our buses. I have been for a very long time, along with Superintendent Spearman. Most Republicans throughout the State House, they recognize the problems that you were just mentioning, that we have to go ahead and take care of this. Governor McMaster, I appreciate that with his vetoes, he is trying to he's being very conscientious of trying to do responsible spending and cut back on and make sure there's no wasteful spending. And part of that was he looked at this, and the way that the state legislature took the money was from the lottery for the buses as well as for scholarships. And basically Governor McMaster said it's irresponsible for us to go ahead and commit this money to these things when we don't know how much money is going to come in from the lottery, since that is completely dependent on how many people go buy lottery tickets, which I'm not going to encourage anybody to go buy lottery tickets, but,
While I respectfully just disagree with the governor altogether, because at some point we have to put the safety of our children, some of our most precious resources, our children, we have to put the safety and the well-being of them above our partisan party politics. And I know the governor wants to paint a picture of being a fiscal conservative. I'm all for painting whatever picture he wants to paint, if that's what he wants to do. However he wants to cut his tomatoes, fine by me. But at the end
we
of
need
the
buses, though, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, our children's safety
It's too important.
far more important than the politics of a Republican gubernatorial primary any day of the week.
Yeah, if you're not protecting my kids, what did I vote for you for?
You're not just talking about another issue. We're talking about people's lives being at stake.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And eventually it's gonna cost the state even more money in the long term if we don't fix the problem. Now, when you don't fix a leaky roof,
It's going to
it
spread.
costs you more.
Costs you more to
It
fix.
costs more to fix it later on down the road if the leak keeps going.
And it's been overdue. And I'll add to that we've talked about privatization of the bus system for quite some time, and that's something that we as a state we need to move forward with. It would be good. I think that is fairly agreed upon, bipartisan on both sides.
Okay.
It's technicalities on whether or not that's a good idea, but ultimately we have to do something about our school transportation. As we've said, the children are too important.
And while John and I may disagree on a lot of things, but fundamentally we both believe that there are certain things that go beyond and above partisan politics.
Absolutely.
Right.
Education, economic development,
Yep.
healthcare.
Though how we get there,
How we- but
it's
that's the
about how. But we do believe
How
in
we
the same
how
things.
we get to the mall is always the question.
Yeah.
But we
He
know we're
wants
going
to
to
go
the mall.
77. I want to go 26. But we both want to get to the mall.
Absolutely. So when you go back to the state, you tell your buddies clock in and do an average evaluation. We have to do future evals all the time.
Here's a challenge for your listeners. Call your legislator and
Absolutely.
tell them you want to override the governor's veto of the school bus. This is a way for your listeners, and you have a strong following, David.
Absolutely.
And the team. This is a way for them literally to be engaged and be involved in the process. People always ask, what can I do? Well, this is a way for you to get involved. Go to www.scstatehouse.gov. You can put in your zip code, find out who your legislators are. There's a little point that says find my legislator, and you can send them an email. You can get their phone number to call the office. If you can find out who they are, and you can possibly see if they have a social media account, but tell them, Democrat or Republican, you want to override the governor's veto about school buses.
Which I do want to piggyback on that, and that anyone who feels like their vote does not matter, I can tell you, even if it doesn't feel like your representative's listening to you because he did not vote the way you asked him to, it is incredible the power of if you call them up and tell your representatives how you feel about an issue, they do respond to that. And the more people that do it, the more they respond to it, particularly on the local levels of your state senators and your state house representatives. It is there's so few people, you would be surprised how few people really do talk to these guys and tell them what the needs are of the community. And they really do want to hear, and they will really respond to it. So if you don't feel like you're getting heard, go talk to them. They'll listen.
And there's strength in numbers. The more, the better.
Absolutely.
The more money you have, the better you are. The more voices you have calling your legislator, the better off we are.
Absolutely. That's www.sc.gov.
scstatehouse.gov.
It's already on the live feed.
All right, and we're gonna share in a couple posts also. Thank y'all again for coming in for this extended version. I just tell how much, man.
We're making Freethinkers great again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I feel like we just scratched the surface as always.
As always, man. Hey, appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all once again next month. Now, until we come back with this next political thing next month, we want to know when we get on this thing next month how many people called in about that veto, because that's serious. That's real business. We're gonna push that. Through all the shows this week, we're gonna make sure that's known that that's what's going on, and this is what we're gonna do. Because without action, while we sitting here talking,
Action speaks
Right.
louder than words.
That's good.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're just gonna see y'all next time, huh?
Feel free to think freely.
Boom.
Warriors in 5.
That's it.